Hello, my financial favorites. Today we're going to be looking at a full video tutorial on how to do the rigged physics reacting armature in Blender. So you can see right now we have the first example I showed of Sarah open. This is going to be the final version of the effect and things you can hope to accomplish with this method. It's a little bit labor intensive to set up, I will freely admit that, but the benefits can be worth it. You can do things far more complicated with this effect than this simple little hair animation that I have set up here, but for the purposes of demonstration, I feel it shows us what we're doing simply enough. Now, I'm not going to reconstruct this model exactly, because it's too complicated. It'll take hours, and I don't feel like doing that, so we're going to use a very simple example right here. So I actually found this method frantically Googling on the Google on a forum. I don't remember what forum. I did like a month ago and I had the idea to make this video, but that was a while ago. Now I don't remember. So if I find it, I will link it in the description. But they were talking about trying to get physics working on a rig for a certain IP from a certain video game company that if I showed gameplay footage would get my channel instantly demonetized. But imagine for a second that this abstract shape for the purposes of demonstration is that said character, and you'll begin to understand of how exactly this is going to be set up. So just to give a demo on the actual demo geometry, if I take this bone here, this head bone, and grab this cap shape, you're going to see if I move it around, it kind of reacts with it. And that's the effect we want. Normally bones don't react to gravity, and we gotta like hand animate all that, and I'm not about hand animating, because I'm lazy. So we're gonna go start to finish setting this up. The first thing we need to do is we're gonna have to delete everything. Except for the geometry, because we already have that. I'm gonna go in here, get rid of all this garbage. Minus the geometry, like I just said. Okay, I'm going to side view and start. So the main method of this is that we're going to have a separate piece of very low geometry mesh, and that is going to drive the simulation. And then we're going to have that simulation be the targets of IK for bones. So as we move the geometry, the low poly mesh, the very low resolution mesh, in fact this one's only going to be 4 verts. As those 4 verts move and react to a cloth simulation, they're going to drive the bones, which will then deform the mesh we actually want to react with the simulation. So let's dive in. We're going to wireframe here. We're going to center our cursor. I'm going to click right here. I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to add a plane. I tab into the plane. I'm going to W merge at cursor. So now we just have a single point. There is also an add-on you can get that lets you just add a single point. But I reinstalled Blender recently and forgot to turn it back on before starting this video. So now we're just going to extrude it. E, E, E. Actually, I'm probably going to move this one a little bit, move that one a little bit. Try and keep them lined up with loops on the mesh itself. But again, this is just a demonstration. I'm not sweating it too much. And that's it. That is the entire mesh that is going to drive our deformer here. We're in for a good time. So what we want to do next is we want to make an intermediary. Because if we just target the bones with the points itself, it's not going to work. So we need an intermediary object between the points that are going to be deforming and the bones themselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to deselect this, and we're going to tab out, deselect, we're going to Shift A, we're going to add a single bone. Now what we're going to do, this is where the time-consuming thing comes in. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Tom, why don't I just use more points to get a more complicated deformation? And you could do that, but the problem is we're going to have to manually assign empties to every single point in our mesh. So the less you have, the less time is going to take. So let me walk you through what we're about to do here. We're going to have that set up for later. Kind of jumped the gun a little bit on it, but that's okay. We're going to tab back in here. We're going to select this point. We're going to have to shift S to snap. We're going to snap our cursor to selected. Now we're going to tab out, shift A. We're going to add an empty and cube. You can use whatever kind you want. I just found cubes work pretty well. I'm going to scale it down so it's kind of surrounding our point. And now we're just going to repeat this process. So I'm going to go back into the deforming mesh, shift S, cursor to selected, tab out, add empty, cube, scale it down. Go back here, select the final point, shift S, cursor to selected, tab out, add empty, cube, scale down. And just for shits and giggles, we'll go back here and we'll add one here as well. So now we have an empty for each one. Now what we want to do is we want to extrude the bones to match. We're going to the bone. I'm going to take the tip here. And we're going to need to move this tip to exactly the same spot again. And so we're going to do the exact same thing we just did, except we're going to do the empties to the bone tips instead of the vertices to the empties. So let's go back here, click on the empty, again, shift S, cursor to selected, tab over here, tab into edit mode. Now we're going to do selection to cursor, boom. So now that's in the right place. Now we're going to do hit E to extrude a new bone, and drop that anywhere we want, it doesn't matter. We're going to tab back out, select the next empty, cursor to selected, go back here, tab in edit mode, selection to cursor, here we go, extrude another bone. You can see this is oodles and oodles of fun to set up. A lot of empty repetition, no pun intended. Shift S, cursor selected, go back here, selection to cursor. So now we have the bones. Oh, look at that. The center thing didn't work. It's alright. If this happens, all you gotta do is just select everything. So, we tab out of edit mode. Select that, select those, we'll select the empties. I said we'll select the empties. Come on. And we're gonna have to hit S, X0. No. GX0. Alright, it's not gonna work. Okay, well make sure you don't fuck this up. This is gonna not be 100% perfect, but for the sake of demonstration, not gonna be a huge problem. But make sure your cursor isn't stupid like mine is. Alright, so whatever. Double check that. Do as I say, not as I've done when it comes to this. What we need to do next is we need to add our actual cloth modifier. So I'm gonna go up here, add cloth. And you can play around with the settings to make the cloth react exactly how you want. There are some presets. We can just drop a cotton preset here if we want. Depending on the effect you're looking for, like hair is obviously going to move different than cotton and stuff, so you just play around with the settings and stuff to get them where you want. I used to remember exactly what all these fields did. I don't anymore. So we're just going to leave it as a cotton preset for now and hope that it works pretty well. So if we just play it, you can see it's going to drop right off, which is a problem because we need to set pinning. So what we want to do is we want to have this first point here in a pin group. So we're going to go back into our mesh. We're going to go over to here. We need to add a vertex group. I'm going to tab in here. We're going to select the first point because this is the point we don't want this one to move, right? This is the base of the cap. We want it to stay attached to the head. If you have, like, you know, where you have like strands of hair, the top of the strands where you don't want them to move, you want to make sure those are in this vertex group we're creating right now. So we're just going to assign this to a weight of 1. Assign. Now if we go back into our cloth, turn on pinning, We choose that group, which you probably should name it, but I'm just going quick here. Okay, so now that we have the object pinned in the beginning, if we hit play now, you can see it reacts kind of like you would expect, but everything else is super loose. So normally, well, this is good if you're going to have like hair just like hanging down. For a more structured object like this, or hair that kind of has a specific style and you just want to add some simple secondary animation, you don't want it to be completely loose like this. You want it to have a little bit of play, but you want to have it keep a general shape. And so we can actually control this by going back into our vertex group. So if we stop this animation, and we go back into the group we created, remember we have 1 point set right now set to 1. So everything else doesn't have a setting at all, so it's just basically 0. So it's just going to be completely at play with gravity. But we can add some lighter weights to kind of mitigate the swaying like that and give it a bit more rigidity. So I'm going to go to the next point over here. I'm going to set this weight to, let's say, maybe 0.75. So it's a little bit lower. I'm going to hit assign. Go to this one. We'll go maybe 0.6. Around 0.6, assign there. Then this one will do like 0.5 and assign. And you can play with these to optimize the deformation the way you want it to be. But if we tab out of this and we play the animation again, you can see now it's a little bit stiffer. So it's going to hold its shape a bit better. And of course we can keep playing with that to make it what we want. So now let's go back into our armature here. Tab into the bones. I'm going to go into pose mode. I'm actually going to turn on X-ray so we can see them through here. And fuck it, we'll just go like this. So what we want to do now is we want to set the IK of these bones. We want the IK to follow... we need to set up some parenting. So we want the IK to follow the empties, and we need the empties to follow the verts. So let's set the bones first since we're already here. So what we need to set the empties to be parented to the vertices in our simulation. And then we need to add inverse kinematics to all the bones that are going to animate. And we want to set the IK targets to those empties. So when they're in an IK chain, they're all going to move in response to those. So let's set up the IK first. So we're just going to go into our bone constraints here. We're going to add inverse kinematics. We're going to choose the target of this empty. We're just going to go through and do each one. Now right now this obviously isn't going to do anything because we haven't parented the empties, but once we do, we'll have these set up and ready to go. So I'm just going to add another inverse kinematics, choose our target. Another thing we're going to want to do that I almost forgot, you want to change the chain length to 1 since we're not affecting any other bones in the chain. The entire chain is going to be driven by the simulation, so we don't need to worry about bone chains at all at this point. Chain length of 1. Here, do the same thing. See, we don't want this little point affecting the entire chain. So we just want it to be 1. Click that last empty. There we go. So now, let's tab out of here. Let's go into here. And we're going to select. We want to select the empty first. And then shift select this. Control P. Make vertex parent. So click the empty, shift select the mesh, tab into the mesh, then shift select the point you want, then hit P. Control P. Make vertex parent. Oops, I have both selected, my bad. Make sure we have one selected. So we'll go down here to the last one, tab out, tab in, make sure only one selected, and then Control P, make vertex parent. Okay, and the last thing we want to do is we want to have like a head controller, so we're just going to go back into our bones. Probably should have done this first, but you know. We will Shift D, duplicate this, rotate it, scale it up. Again, this is just quick and dirty. You want to do a lot more attention when you're doing this. Now we're going to make sure that the parent to this bone is this one. No? Okay, never mind. I will just... Alright, so I want... to get rid of the IK on this. Because we don't need an IK on the head controller, obviously. If I hadn't just duplicated it, this wouldn't be a problem. So, once again, do as I say, not as I do. Let's remove that. I'm going to add the parent. And we want it to be bone. No, I'm doing it completely incorrectly. Why am I messing this up so much? I want this thing's parent to be bone 3. Okay, now it's set up. Everything's good to go. So now, God willing, if we take this, of course not. Okay, we still have set something up incorrectly. Oh, right. The last thing we need to do is we need to take the actual geometry. If I can select it, for the love of God. We need to parent that to this bone. Alright, it's not exactly the kind of deformation I was hoping for, but the rig itself is set up. So we can go in and we can adjust our simulation now. Dial down the velocity a bit. Here's the speed. There we go. Now we're getting an effect that's kind of sort of what we're after. Should probably extend the timeline a bit so the effect will last longer. Oops. I don't know why I keep stopping though. That's weird. God, Blender, you're embarrassing me in front of my friends. Alright, so now that we have that working relatively okay, we're just going to do the old standard automatic weights. And now, there we go. Done and done, my friends. We now have a rig that reacts to gravity pretty simplistically. And there you go. Hope you can have fun with this and do some cool stuff.